give it a whirl. I think we'll kind of call the meeting to order. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and do roll call. We got select person Maura Curran. I see Mr. Gallagher's on.
Yeah, good to be here.
Thank you for joining in.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have a representative from you guys on the, as our liaison. That helps. Thanks.
Yeah, looking forward to catching up.
Yeah. And Stephen, we do not have. Rick Murray, saw Rick.
Here.
Brian Kelly, I think I saw join in.
You're muted, Brian.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Yeah. Howie's here. Dave Friedman's here. What, Dave Sinkowski? I don't know if I saw him.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Unless that's his phone calling in, is it?
He's in the.
Oh, you know what? He's getting admitted right now into the, just popped
There he
up.
is.
So, yeah. So Dave.
He's in Florida, by the way, for 2 months.
Is he really?
Yeah, he says, if I have to work from home, I'm going to work from Florida. So
Can't blame him there. So how about Craig?
Craig's there. Craig's muted.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. Tucker? Any Tucker sightings?
Nope.
Nope. And I believe I saw Steve Gard on there earlier. So Steve's on. And last but not least, Dave Haley. I don't see Dave, so. All right, so we got most of the people here. I don't know if all of you caught it, but Stephen Moan had texted me earlier, said that he is en route to the boat, the new boat up in Maine. So he's not going to be able to join tonight. He's on the road with Chief Murphy. I think they're doing a sea trial tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, up there. So we'll have to mix it up a little bit when we get to his section. I have some of the updates that he gave me, so I'll kind of run through some of that stuff quickly. But can I get a acceptance of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And has anyone or everyone gotten a chance to review the minutes from January?
Alicia, again, those are the most detailed minutes I think I've ever seen, ever. Thank you.
That's good. Yeah. Everyone else get a chance to review them? Oh, Brian?
Yeah, just a minor comment on the very end, where you asked for an adjournment, Mike. It was seconded by question marks. I believe that was Dave Friedman.
Okay.
We just want to make a correction on the minutes.
Beautiful.
I'll put Dave in, thanks.
Sure.
All right. And did we have any other corrections?
Looks great.
Okay, good. Get a motion to accept the minutes from January.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Dave and Brian. All right, we on to the Harbour Master report. So you want me to act like Stephen Moan?
Please.
Please. Dave, I hear you down in Florida.
Yeah, much as Dave was mentioning, I decided to work from home in a warm place.
Yeah, that's a smart move. Yeah. How long will you stay down for?
60 days, just me, the wife, and the dog.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Miss all the nasty stuff, right?
Yep, the dog appreciates it.
I bet. Yeah. So the first thing on the agenda was really the update on the new boat for Stephen. So good news, right? So the boat is finally complete. I'll do a screen share for those of you that have not seen any of the pictures here. Screen 2.
While you're doing that, Mike, where is it going to go when it comes down here? Is it going to stay in the water? Or are we pulling it, then winterizing it, and then?
Yeah, I believe that they're actually bringing probably right to Scituate Boatworks, and they're probably going to have to winterize it right away because
Wow.
with the temperatures that are coming up, I'm sure they're going to have to winterize everything and then get it prepared in the springtime for doing that fire pump. Would be my best guess. So,
Nice
can you
boat.
guys see the picture that I'm sharing?
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice looking boat. I mean, the brand itself is a really nice brand of boat. It's very, very good. I think I have one other picture from the other side here. Maybe just a different view of it. Yeah. So it's finally complete. The windows are in, the doors in. I guess they're doing that sea trial tomorrow. So assuming everything goes to plan, then that will be one more thing kind of checked off. And then it'll be en route down here. It's going to come down on a trailer. They decided to go over the road with it. They got a price that was just under $4,000 to haul it down. It looks like that's what they're planning on doing. So. So that was the first update. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Nope. The Cole Parkway Marina piling project status update. So they finally started working there. They had some questions for engineering, so they had to stop for a couple days to get the questions answered. I don't know what those questions were, but I was told that they resumed doing the work, and that they have moved some stones and started to drive some test pilings to see if they can get the depth where they need them. I assume that's kind of up near where the pier is, closer to land, but I don't really know for sure on that. I asked Stephen where they were at from a schedule standpoint against the schedule, and he committed to getting us a copy of the kind of project schedule itself. So we'll ask for that for the next meeting, because I'd like to make sure that we're staying on track with that. He did text me back later today and told me that the project is on schedule per the schedule that they have today. So I think it'd be good if we had a copy of that schedule just to kind of see what the, where the different interdependencies are, what the milestones of the project are, so that we can kind of track it, because we're really into the beginning of February now. So if you think about it, we really only get a couple months here until that really needs to be in pretty full swing and kind of wrapping up before they can get over to even the marine park. So he did ask me to add something on to new business, as you can see below, that has to do with the pilings. So we'll get to that when we get to new business. But as far as that update goes, does anyone have any questions on that?
Mike, do you have any idea, or does anybody have any idea how much time we need once the pilings are in to actually install the docks? And I guess we're going to install the docks, I think.
No, I don't think they, yeah.
And then the water and the electric. Is that 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
So what Stephen had told me, because I'd asked him this a few weeks back, was that as they drive pilings, they move pieces of the marina back in place. So they'll start with that kind of main pier once all the landside stuff is done, right?
Yeah.
They'll start the main floats that are there, drive the pilings in them, add on sections of let's call it the B dock or A dock, right? And as they add on some of those sections, they'll drive the pilings there along those. But it is, from what I understand, it is in their contract not only to put the marina back together, but it includes the water and the electrical as well.
Oh, good.
It's all in the contract for them too. So when it's turned over on the 14th, or hopefully a lot before that, it should be, ready to go.
Thank you.
Yeah. So old business. So before we jump into the old business, we had several things that we worked on the last few months, right? We had the mooring rules and regulations. We had the Marina contract verbiage amended, and we had the new rates for moorings and the marinas, right? We had those three things that we had worked on, we had voted on, and we'd moved those to the select board to vote on. So at the last select board, or maybe I guess it was the last one, they voted and approved all three of those the way that they stood. So I just wanted to kind of circle back with you guys to let you know that all three of those are done. If you need anything on that, copies of the stuff, just let me know. I'll get it to you.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
a quick question or suggestion maybe, that when it comes to the Harbour Master report, is it possible we could include a standard, every month update on the rivers? It just seems that this is one of our bigger challenges, and we've made a lot of improvements over the last year. But it's something I think that it seems to come up again when we have a problem, and I think maybe we should have a standing discussion every month on what's going on and what could be done to make it better.
So Dave, just so I'm clear, because I think it's a good idea, right? Just in general for the rivers, or
coverage? I think if anyone else wants to chime in, I mean, obviously the coverage is a bit of a challenge. In my view, and the Scituate Harbour Master probably is providing 60+% of the coverage that's there, and then there is the Scituate PD. And then augmented by Marshfield when they're there, which is not very often. I just think it's something that's something we should keep an eye on. And then, and with the increased activity last year, it's going to be a bigger challenge this year. So it's something we should talk about, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll add that into the agenda for the Harbour Master report, just so that we're touching that, because quite a few things are. Well, at least one thing's coming off of it, the boat delivery, right? Updating the boat delivery, so we can take that off. I'll add that on for next month's update.
And Mike, I would echo what Dave says. I think you're right on track, Dave. We have a lot of discussion during the hot season about what's going on and how fast people are going and all those sorts of things. And it seems to me we ought to be using the time during this down part of the season to maybe develop a little bit of a strategy. I think that's what you're asking for, Dave, as to what's our game plan? Is there any way we could improve it? Is there things we should be looking at? I mean, there's all sorts of things that have been mentioned, not the least of which there's been a proliferation of moorings in the rivers. And what does that all mean? So that's my 10 cents worth. I think we ought to have some strategy going on a periodic basis.
So a couple things, just thinking out loud. So probably a strategy on how they're patrolling it, I think is what you're talking about, but then just an overall kind of strategy and how we're managing what's happening down the river, right? In general.
Yeah, we spend an inordinate amount of time in some respects talking about the harbor. And what Dave is saying, it would be nice if we were spending the same similar amount of time on the rivers, right, Dave?
Yeah, that is correct.
All right, good. I got it. Yeah.
Dave, the cross-examinations will get easier.
What's that?
I said the cross-examinations will get easier.
All right. So I think with that, we're getting into kind of the old business that's on there. So the update on the comprehensive dredge project. Really, the update is really that the Army Corps of Engineers used to issue these comprehensive dredge permits for 10 years, right? They've pulled back on doing that. They're now 5-year permits. And with having a 5-year permit that you can extend at least a couple times, the feeling was it didn't, and with the cost of having the comprehensive dredge permit, that it was probably a lot more than we were on to really kind of bite off at the time. So Stephen's thoughts, that he had explained to me this morning is that he wants to refocus on some of the spots we had in the harbor. So the inner harbor, a couple of spots that were there, and I think one other area, but focus on the harbor and trying to get that permitted and using some of those monies that were already allocated, for the comprehensive dredge permit, and using some of those monies to permit just the stuff in the inner harbor. So it would require a separate RFP. I believe Stephen's already gone to Nancy and was told that he could have 50. Well, I probably shouldn't use the numbers, right? But 50 or 60,000, right, for permitting the harbor stuff. So, Howie?
Mike, before we try to make these kinds of decisions about modifying what it is that we think we need,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be helpful if we could get a comprehensive update on what transpired? What does it mean that the cost came in high? What does that mean? Who bid on it? What did they bid on? What was their strategy? What's their objectives? Before we just abandon that, because we spent money to do that, to prepare it. Now you may be suggesting, well, let's redirect some money to do it a different way. Having not a 10-year permitting process, only 5 with extensions, I kind of gets you to the same place. But the opportunity that we're missing right now is not having this in place so that if a barge goes by to do a small job, for instance, in the North and the South River, we can't capitalize on that mobilization to do some of the maintenance dredging that we need in the harbor because we don't have the permitting. So I would suggest before we change direction here, it would be nice to know where we are.
Okay. We can ask Stephen to give us a more detailed update on kind of where that came in. I don't have the numbers with me, but I'll tell you just off the top of my head, the numbers were in the 3.5 to maybe 4 times the range of what was allocated that we thought it was going to be.
So we allocated what, $70,000 or $80,000, Brian?
I think it was 90.
That was for the engineering.
Mike,
Right?
I think it was 80,000, Mike. And you're right. I think the lowest bid came in around 250, right?
The lowest one, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how is it that when we develop the RFP, how could we be off that far? Just a question.
Well, Howie, you hit it on it last time. It was the DPW guys that I think put together the RFP, right, Mike? And I think it was a guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure what sort of research they did to kind of come up with there seemed to be a lot of work that was done on what other harbors did. So I would imagine at the same time they were asking, what did it cost to do that? But,
well, Mike, you were at the meeting where they reviewed the RFPs, as was Mr. Frazier, the harbor master from Falmouth.
Yep.
I mean, it just seems odd to me that we didn't have some idea, or at least a ballpark, where these might come in. And it seems like we're a little taken aback that the price is 3 to 4 times what we expected.
Yeah.
Maybe it's me. But I'm not in favor of going down a different path until we understand what it is we're trying to do, what we've done, what we've spent, and what's realistic.
I'll tell you what, I had done some other kind of homework with Mr. DeMayo in Marshfield. So maybe what we can do here is kind of pull both those guys together and just talk about it in the next meeting, add that onto the agenda. Mike did tell me that he was willing to participate and talk about it and his thoughts on it. So I'll see if he's still good with doing that and try to see if we can get him on for the next meeting to go through kind of where it's at and what both their thoughts were on it, and at least explain to the board kind of what his thoughts are and why he wants to pull back from that. So,
Okay.
1 minute. Any other questions on that portion? Oh, Brian?
Yeah, Mike, I second what Howie's saying. But one of the things that really the town, Stephen, Sean, et cetera, DPW really needs to take a look at is the involvement of Marshfield, because the way we went down the road on this one is my understanding is that we were going to fund the studies and the permits for the rivers on our own. Reality is both North and South River, we should be engaging with Marshfield, with Mike DeMeo, et cetera, and ask for their involvement to permit these bodies of water where we would take on the 100% of the harbor ourselves.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. And that's why I had reached out to Mr. DeMeo, just to talk to him about that. And I think he's probably in agreement on that, although his priority right now is different than what Scituate is, right? His priority right now is to do the rest of the river.
Right. Well, there's no reason to have a comprehensive permit of all the bodies. Instead, have one for the harbor and then deal with the rivers with Marshfield as a separate entity.
Yeah.
I'm not saying ignore it, but again, these permits they no longer last for 10 years. They're only good for 5.
Yeah.
So we've got some critical areas in the harbor that need to be addressed, especially for the lobstermen. And I'd like to see us moving forward in that direction at a minimum. And I'm sure I'm saying something that everybody else is thinking as well.
Does anybody know if we have any current permits at all? Are we completely expired on all our permits?
The North River.
The one we just did.
Yeah.
South River, as far as I remember, is permitted from the mouth, the area that they, dredged last year, and then all the way down to the C Street Bridge, possibly. Yeah. I think it's permitted. Mike, what's that?
Mike, I think it's the remainder of, so Zone A has been done, part of Zone B, by that I mean dredged. Zone B is permitted and part of that is done. And then Zone C is, I believe, permitted, but nothing's been done.
That's my understanding too, Ryan. Yeah.
Right.
So permitted, but not dredged. So, yeah.
And Mike, just to remind the group, we discussed this back in May, I think. The entrance of the Herring River at low tide is not accessible. There's no way your new fireboat would get anywhere near it. So you can't get through there with a skiff at certain tides.
Oh yeah. So that really should be a priority too, to make sure that there's access up there, and that probably does open up the whole conversation of the Herring River at some point too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just want to keep it on our minds that this has to be taken care of at some point before we have an event up there, and you can't get a boat there.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah.
Is the Herring River in our purview? The river itself? Because those are private channel markers up there. And I think it's probably in our purview right up to the area that Dave Sinkowski's talking about, but
yeah, it's a good question.
I'm not sure we're responsible for dredging all the way up to Marina.
In previous conversations, we talked about going up to the ramp at least, and then obviously, not up to the marina, but up to the ramp. But you're right; it may not even be our perimeter. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. All the years I've been doing this, I've actually never had that thought.
I think it is, but this is on only my opinion. I think it is all the way up until you get to the marina that's up there, but I'm not quite sure kind of what rules apply on that. So
yeah, they are Scituate Waters, right?
Yeah, it's Scituate Waters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The whole way it's Scituate Waters. So yeah. Mm-hmm. And certainly not private, right?
Well, we probably should focus first on trying to get the maintenance strategy done in the harbor, which I can't seem to get permitted, and then worry about these extraneous permits. You have to get over that hurdle. I mean, this process seems to be a little bit loose in my estimation. these weren't even formal RFP bids because it's coming under the auspices of engineering. So
Yeah.
I'm at a loss in trying to understand how much it's costing us even to date and how much we're putting into it. And I've said enough.
Yeah. It's obviously pretty expensive just to have the engineering portion done just to get the permits, Howie, right?
Yeah.
Never mind the dredging.
Exactly.
So, all right. So we'll continue to leave that on the agenda for next month and hope for a better update. And we'll have some other people come in and speak to it. People have more knowledge than I do. So. Next up, we have small vessel decal study and the work group update.
Dave, you want me to start?
Please.
You want me to put your document up, Dave? I'll
You
put it
can
up.
for the other folks that didn't get it. And this is just a sort of a memo for discussion type of a document, because for about 6 or 7 months, we've been talking a little bit about this, and we've been talking around and around and around and not really having any direct focus on exactly what the commission would like to do or have done. And so we just, noted these bullet points here about what our objectives are, and we want to hear the commission's thoughts on, what we should pursue. Starting with, a lot of talk has been given towards the increased costs for the harbor masters and other organizations because of the drastic increase in all these kinds of paddlecraft. And so that was number one, try to reduce those costs. And the first thought that came to mind was the stickers. And so, Steve's, our harbor master, saying, oh, we give out the stickers at the harbor master's office. I've been a boater in Scituate for about 12, 13 years. I've been to the harbor master's office once. So that's that's not really marketing the concept of using stickers. So again, this is a document of what is our mission? Is it just reduce the cost? Is it look for opportunities to increase revenue? And then third was, increase safe access to the waterways for these paddlecraft. And number three, we could use that to increase some revenue. So I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to read this document or not. It's just, again, a working document that we're looking for input from the commission on which way we go.
Do you want to continue to go through, or do you want to solicit input from the group as we go here?
Again, I could read the bullet points like everybody else can. I'm not sure we can require the use of these stickers on kayaks. Other towns, through Dave Sinkowski's research, have shown that they do. Most other towns do have some sticker program for kayaks. Free stickers we're talking about. Again, I'm not sure if everybody saw the police post on, I think it was on Facebook, when they found that inflatable deflated on the beach somewhere, and they didn't know whose it was. They didn't know whether somebody went overboard or anything. So I think, the idea is we should heavily market these free stickers. Even, again, looking through these bullet points, the last one Dave Sinkowski came up with, just have a seasonal kid there on weekends, on various rotating. That last bullet point on the go up, Mike, go up. Last bullet point on number one there. Just have kids not kids, but high school, whatever, giving out these stickers as they see people launching their kayaks. Say, hey, Scituate is suggesting we have these stickers, and they have a little Sharpie and they put the name and phone number on it, and boom, it's a way just to increase the use of those, to minimize the risk of the harbor master having to. It's not a safety check or anything like that. It's just to give out these stickers. So that's easy.
By the way, I think that's a great idea to have them doing that. And, if they're out and about as well, and they see people launching somewhere, then they can stop over and just talk to them for a couple of minutes. And
right. I think Dave was talking about having that as their mission, for 5 hours on Saturday and Sunday, have two kids, rotating between the Driftway Park and Minot and the Scituate Maritime Center, wherever people launch kayaks in town, just giving out stickers. And then a townwide email saying, we should use these stickers, and a whole blurb on it about why we think you should have stickers on your kayaks. Just call the harbor master's office. You'll get one mailed to you, or email the harbor master's office, get one mailed to you. I mean, that's a serious marketing campaign just to reduce this significant risk. And I'm sure Dave Daphne will say more about it, but that's just a simple, easy way to get the stickers out there. Again, free stickers. Spend a couple $100 for stickers. So that was easy, I think. And then the mission number 2 was look for opportunities to increase revenue. Again, things we've talked about are the Jericho ramp. That's number 2 there, Mike.
Yep.
Increase revenue by charging, 2A there, charging the commercial boat haulers.
Can I interrupt for a sec?
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, it's Rick Murray. I'm a little slow here. I'm still up back on number 1. I think we want to not necessarily prescribe, the implementation, how we would go about getting the stickers out there. I certainly support a sticker program, voluntary to help people with their property and so on. But, whether we have kids handing them out, those kids need to be paid. Then if they're driving around, it gets to be messy and all that sort of thing. So, it's probably just easiest to have the harbor master hand them out, and all the flotilla from the harbor master's fleet, whenever they see people out there at kayaks, just tootle on over and make sure they have stickers and stuff. But either way, I don't think we need to really get involved in the implementation of it. We should say we want to have a sticker program like this, and then ask the harbor master to come up with some ideas how he thinks he should implement it, and then we can have a separate implementation discussion.
Understood. These are just some ideas.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. We should have a separate discussion just on that. But I think to Dave's point earlier that, he's only been to the harbor master twice in 13 years. And so unless you're going into that office when you're stopping a kayaker who's already in the water and you're going to hand them something to put on their hull, obviously I think it's fine to try, but it's a little more difficult.
Yeah.
I think that's my thought on having, 2 kids that, I say 2 kids, he has the summer help working there, mostly college students, that if you had, for instance, 2 of them down at the Conservation Park, and where probably the majority of the kayaks are launched, and you're handing these out and you have a Sharpie before the kayak gets in the water. The other thing you could do also is you could start, have a pad of paper and writing down who is it that uses our ramps. Are these how many kayaks versus how many boats versus how many oversized, boats going on in areas maybe they shouldn't be. We could start to gather some information to help us make, better decisions in the future.
Sure.
And I don't see paying some college kids is very expensive, but anyway, it's just a thought.
I agree. I'm just saying we should say we want a sticker program and then have Steve come up with some ideas. And Dave, I totally appreciate your coming up. You're just throwing ideas out there for discussion, which is great. But let's make sure we don't prescribe to anything until we hear from Steve. He might come up with some ideas that are good. He might come up with some ideas that are not so good. And then we can have that as a separate discussion.
Sure. Agreed.
And then moving on to number 2, it was figure out ways. Again, this is motivated by people talking about a lot of people use our waterways that aren't, they don't pay the waterways a usage fee. They don't have a mooring. They don't have a slip. They just, they're either the boat haulers or the people that always trailer their boats. And so the ideas that we had come up with as a group were, number 1, possibly look into charging commercial boat haulers a fee. I don't know if that's possible because it is a public ramp. And as Dave says, Marshfield mandate it, but only enforces it if they park there. The B item was charge for parking at Jericho, whether an annual sticker or $15 a day. And then the challenges that we thought of in this item were who administers this, who polices this, and where does that money go? Does it go to town hall or does it go to directly in the harbor master's office? And those things need to be considered. And then C in this item was, the idea of the paddlecraft racks and charging for that. And this is the areas where this could be, if you want to slide down a little bit, Mike.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of different areas where we could have these things on C there. If we decided to pursue this and charge for it, Conservation Park, we need conservation permission. The Jericho ramp, possibly on the backside of the parking lot, maybe in Cole Parkway. You take a couple parking spots near the ramp there, if we thought that was appropriate. And it's a way to, we think, minimize parking, because we think a lot of kids, not kids, but people without cars may get dropped off there and they get in their kayak and nobody's parking. So that's really where we were. And Dave flushed out a little bit of a way to do a very inexpensive rack, if we went that way, a rack system to house these kayaks. So again, this whole memo is for the 3 days looking for some waterways, commission direction and what we want to pursue, if any of these.
Right. I would just add, Dave, to your point, these are very broad subjects. So trying to cover them all on two pieces of paper, they really should be broken up into almost 3 different groups: short, medium, and long-term type discussions.
I would agree. That would probably be a good way to break it up and chunk it off and figure out where you want to focus first, right? And then work on one piece of it at a time, right? Because like Mr. Murray said, I think some of this here might fall more, like item number 1 might fall squarely on the Harbor Master's department to do, and his resources, and on them to really implement it, right? But some of these other ones might take a little bit more lifting in order to get them put in place. But I think they're all good initiatives. I think you guys are the work group. We'd like input from the Waterways Commission, but where do you want them to focus, guys? Where do you want them to start? And then try to take them one at a time, I guess, instead of all at once.
Just one last point also to augment what Dave said is when we did a study of the coastal towns, all the way down to like Marion, we're one of the few towns that don't offer storage for kayaks. So storage for kayaks is the norm. And I think it's something we're a little behind. And I think if you look what Marshfield's doing, they also have access for handicap people to get in a kayak. So I think even longer term, we should have a goal to have such things for our residents.
Great idea.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
So Mike, how do you want to proceed? Should we try to break this up or what?
That's what I'm thinking is the best way to do it, is to break it up, right? And then as a group, just informally decide, hey, this is probably the priority, which one's the priority for now, and work on one at a time, right? I don't know if anyone has any thoughts.
To me, the sticker program's a no-brainer. I mean, giving out stickers to the Harbor Master's office, how often does a kayaker go to the Harbor Master's office? 0, never. So we need to help Stephen develop a distribution and education program for the whole town.
A marketing program for the town.
What's that?
Some sort of a marketing program to get the word out and make people want to do it. I mean, it needs to be painless.
If you explain to people why it's so important that they are identified, I think people would be fine with putting the stickers on there. But I don't think people are going to go out of their way just because they heard that there's free stickers at the Harbor Master's office, unless you tell them, unless you put a campaign out there around it and they understand why it's really important for them to do it. And then I do think there needs to be some sort of implementation plan from the Harbour Master's office. It's got to be some marketing stuff, and it's got to be some, maybe going down to the ramps between 10 and 12, right? Going from catching some of the people that are there, talking to them about what they're doing, handing them a brochure on safety and giving them a sticker with and helping put a Sharpie on it and put it right on the board itself, right?
Steve, want to say something?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Howard.
Mike, I'd like to on the I'm pursuing the rack system. I'll volunteer some time to work with whoever to see if there's some way we could at least initiate an action to maybe build some sort of a rack system, maybe for 9 or 12 kayaks, determine where it should be set, see what the cost would be, and see if we could be in a position to try to move forward on that initiative.
So Dave, could you work with Howie and kind of try to get that going?
Sure. I mean, the questions are, I mean, certainly the Driftway ramp is the most likely place, I would think, but then we need conservation approval to, put it there. And then who gets, is it first come, first serve? Is it the insiders that get the use of it? And, who gets to use it and how much do you charge and all that? So happy to work, come into the group, Howie, help us out.
We'll develop that, Dave. We can develop the rules and regulations. We can go talk to conservation. That's where we decide, or if it's easier to put it at Jericho Ramp or the backwater off the Cole Parkway or some other place, we'll determine that. And my point is, why don't we try to get one up and operating? Why don't we try to market it to people and maybe charge $100 a season to park your thing there, come up with the rules and initiate an action. I think on the mission, I just would say one thing on the mission statement. I like all 3 items. The only thing I would change, not to sound like I'm wordsmithing, but I put number 3, number 1. Let's make this a pleasant experience for the people that want to use the waterways.
I think that's our mandate, right?
Right.
Yeah. I would agree with you, Howie, on that too. I'd like to see that be the priority. I don't know how other people kind of feel, but I think that's a great starting point on this.
But if we want to get started with a rack, I've seen racks in P-Town. I think they could handle 12 kayaks. It can't cost all that much money to build that, but we could determine all those things, the details, how we want to administer it. And maybe if we could get one up for the summertime, that might be value added.
I think that would be great. Mr. Guard?
I think this is a great job by Dave and his team. I think what resonates with me is the comment Dave made about the unidentified inflatable that washed up on the beach. So I would prioritize the sticker program first. And I think that we don't need to make it quite as complicated. If we're giving out the stickers, I think with some creative signage at the locations where people launch their boats and a self-serve, help yourself to a free sticker with a sign above it that says something along the lines of, help us find you in the case of an emergency, please write your name and number on the sticker and put it on your kayak. I think that would probably simplify that situation, and it would supplement having a young person at those ramps helping explain what's going on. I do believe that putting them at the harbor master's office probably doesn't make sense. People aren't going to go to the ramp at the Driftway and then see a sign and then drive over to the harbor master's office to get a sticker. But my second comment would be on the racks, having done some of these types of things, not a rack system, but going before a board or any kind of requesting permission to do something. I think it's imperative that your team have all of the administrative details worked out and at least be in a position to respond to the questions. Asking for permission to install a rack in a situation is going to, without having that thought through or vetted first, will likely, you'll face lots of questions from the boards about how it's going to work, who is going to use it, where are they going to go from the rack, especially in a sensitive area like a resource area when you go before the Conservation Commission. So I think that my recommendation would be to have that all nailed down before you appear before them. And I think, that's my 2 cents on the sticker program. I think safety first, folks. That's how I look at it. And I think that we do have a real risk of dedicating various safety personnel on a possibly wild goose chase when we find a kayak that's unattended. So that's where I would put my resources.
Good input, Steve. Anyone else that's got input on kind of the prioritization of what goes first?
Mike?
I don't have any input on the prioritization. I think all your points are all very well taken. I would just suggest too, though, to Howie, as we go forward and look for folks to build these racks, the Eagle Scouts are always looking for projects, and that looks like a great project for them. It doesn't look too complicated to me, but I'm not a rack builder. But it may be a nice opportunity to engage them as well, so they can receive their Eagle badges, which they're always looking to do community service to achieve that. So just wanted to suggest that.
That's a good idea, Maura.
Yeah.
And Frank Snow, as the head of the conservation, is a big proponent of utilizing the Eagle Scouts as well. So
Yeah.
help you in that board committee review as well.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Mike.
I would just add to your point that the down at Minot, the kayak launch there, I don't know what it's called, in the parking lot there, that was done by Eagle Scout.
There you go.
Yeah, they actually came to us, boy, that's going to be 5 or 6 years ago that they came before Waterways just to let us know what they were doing. They didn't need approval from us, but they were letting us know what they were doing down there in that parking lot, which was great.
I mean, that's not on our paperwork here, but if there were rooms, someplace to put a rack and people could, access that ramp there and go out to Bassins Beach and other areas, I mean, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah. Good spot.
This is Andy. I'm happy to work with folks, working on this with the Conservation Commission. So as people are developing ideas, happy to work on that. It's a discussion that's come up a little bit when we were looking at Museum Beach and getting kayaks off of there. The rack discussion came up. So happy to work with whoever's leading this to go through ideas.
Dave Freeman is the guy you want.
Thank you, Andy.
Got it.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. It's great.
And the signage is very important. If we're going to decide to move the number 3 mission up to number 1, how many of us have all seen kayakers and paddleboarders in the harbor, outside the harbor, with no life jacket around? And so signage, safe access means using these things safely. So signage is a start, but having assistant harbor masters occasionally watching guys launch is important too. So,
yeah. So how do you guys want to proceed? Do you want to focus on the rackage first, and then kind of at the same time see if we can get something going through Stephen on the sticker program?
Yeah. So let Dave and I and Howie and Andy, and well, Andy will be when we present it, but come back with another set of suggestions next month. But it sounds like, and again, I think this topic came up initially, this whole topic, with number 2 as the most important mission for this group. And so I don't want to let that go off the record, because we do want to increase revenue, especially from people that aren't directly paying and using our waterways. So I don't want that to fall off the page here, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you're doing 2C, that certainly will provide some revenue, right?
Some, but limited.
Yeah.
Very limited.
Yeah.
And did we ever come to a conclusion, and I think somebody did some research, pipe up if you're the one that did it, on whether or not we can charge at the Jericho for parking at the Jericho ramp?
Yeah, we came to that conclusion, Dave, that we could charge. We actually did a study probably 15 years ago. What we found was it was going to cost $2 to collect $1 at that time, because the number of spaces we have are so limited. Unlike Plymouth, that has a much bigger, expansive parking lot, they do it with a meter system.
Yeah, and that's what we would do. Similar to what the T does. You know what I mean? You pay and you put a sticker and you get some electronic thing there.
Right.
But it doesn't cost $2 to collect $1.
Right. No, I think Marshfield's doing it. I believe the number I heard, it was $5,000 for the machine, which, an ATM type machine. You put your credit card on, you put a piece of paper on your dashboard, and you're covered for the day. So they're doing it. I mean, they changed the flow of the parking lot, the direction. They're putting in and out different seawalls. So that it's their land they manage, and it's you know, they don't seem to have to, you know, wait for the state to tell them how to manage it.
So why don't we come back with even though 1 and 2 are the priorities in the reorder situation, you know, I'm willing to do some research to figure out what we could generate and what it would cost to administer. But the bigger question, and this may be a more question, who gets the revenue and who polices it? Is it the harbor master's office that cruises the parking lot looking for these stickers? And that way the police don't have to be involved. And if the if we decided or the selectmen decided that this is Waterways revenue, goes directly to the Waterways Commission, the Waterways Enterprise Fund, then that would be simplest anyway.
So I'm always willing to re-examine things and look at things from a new light because times change and so on. But I think just because we can, in theory, do something doesn't necessarily mean we should. There aren't that many spots down there. And the administrative burden and the angst on this, I see, you know, let's explore it. But, you know, I would really need to be convinced. And I also think if part of our goal is to increase usage of the harbor and make the harbor enjoyable for as many people as possible, you know, adding a yet another fee onto people who are just launching and then, you know, getting away just doesn't make much sense to me. There's probably other ways of, you know, I'm all in favor of raising revenue where needed and justified. Like if we're adding new value, like the kayak ramps, that should absolutely have some charges associated with it. But, you know, I think let's run the numbers, see what it looks like, and make an informed decision on whether it's worthwhile. But I think we have to include a subjective assessment as to whether it's something we philosophically want to do. And then in addition, I think you're right as to like where the money would go to begin with. Maybe we should figure out where the money would go to begin with before we get into all the hassle of doing the homework to figure out if we want to do it. Because if the money would go to just the general town coffer, as much as I enjoy the benefits of the regular aspects of the town like the rest of us, then they should do it, not us.
Good point. But I would think if it was this group that was putting together the program and the harbor master's office collecting the fees, right, you would think that it would fall back into Waterways, but I don't know. I'm not sure how that works.
Well, I don't know that you want the harbor master handing out parking tickets, right? He's got
Yep, that's exactly.
probably better things to do. So I can ask a few questions. I don't really know the answer to where the fees would go, but I'll find out for you.
I think we might have been talking about two different things. I was talking about the fees for, I should have been clear, the rack storage of the kayaks.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but we were talking also about the parking fees, you know, where those would go.
Yeah, parking fees, I don't think I would think that would fall under the harbor master's office. Yeah.
I mean, in Marshfield, I keep using the example. It's the only one I go to visit, but
Yeah.
no one's giving out collecting monies or tickets. There's an ATM. You put your credit card or $1 in there. You get your ticket and you put it on your dashboard. Then the police go around, and if someone isn't, you know, if someone's breaking the law, then they give them a ticket. So the harbor master is not going to be, you know, doing anything like that, in my view. But back to the comment from Rick Murray, I agree, because if this ATM type machine is $3,000 or $5,000, how many summers will it take to pay that thing off? And maybe we don't want to get mired down in this, but I think we should look a little further. But I agree with him; it has to make financial sense at some level. Then you decide if do you really want to do it.
Dave Daphne had his hand up, I think.
Mike?
Yeah.
So just some of the information I'm still working on and gathering happens to be for the Jericho boat ramp. Any monies derived from that ramp have to go back into the ramp itself or maintenance of the facility. So there's no question as to where the money goes. It's a revolving account. It's for upkeep, line painting, lights, lighting, any of those things that go on, maintenance of the dock, the ramps, the floats, any of that stuff. So we're a little premature on discussing the specifics of it until I get a little bit more of this information together.
Okay, that's good information though on that ramp piece of it. That makes sense. All right, so the action item here is that we're going to move forward with item number 2C to start.
Right, and of course, give Steve Moan suggestions on how to market the stickers, and have him come back to us on his suggestions. I think we agree as a commission that we should broadly expand the use of stickers, not require, but encourage use of stickers by all paddlecraft users in Scituate Waterways.
Yeah,
and I would disagree with you, Dave Frieden. We've talked about this enough. They're mandatory. They shouldn't be optional. Our safety on the water is not optional. And when you take those resources and you spend them inconsistently looking for something that didn't happen, that's not an option. It's not an option for me if I'm out there.
So then the mandatory issue becomes, can we mandate?
It doesn't matter whether we can or we can't, we need to. That's the whole part of this discussion. The sticker program isn't a voluntary thing. Safety is not voluntary. $64,000 an hour to go search for a rubber raft owner that's already in his house. That's not fair to any of us on the water, especially those that work there day in and day out.
I agree. I just didn't know how you would require it. That was it. If you're not
They
charging.
put a vehicle on Mars, okay, and they run it from a laptop. Okay, you can figure this out.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not optional.
So if you make it non-optional,
I'll sign on.
Dave, if you make it mandatory, right, what happens when people launch in Marshfield and they're in the river? What do you tell those guys? How do you enforce it, I guess, is the question. You can make it mandatory, right?
Let's take care of our own house first.
Yeah.
Let's build on something. I often hear about other towns that do this and do that. Well, wouldn't it be a shame if we were the first town that did something and it actually made a huge difference, not only in our town, in our community, and our waterways, but on the South Shore and on the East Coast?
Yeah. Good point. Anyone else from the audience want to participate or have any questions on this?
Ike, you got me?
Yep, you're on, Fran.
I'm basically going to have to 100% just agree with Dave Doffney. It's going to be mandatory, whether we have a few harbor master maintenance kids with time in their hands on a Saturday morning or an Eagle Scout or whatever. I think we should be manning the ramps for at least the spring months and applying these labels that the Coast Guard graciously has, provided us, applying them to anybody who wants to throw a kayak in the water with some explanation or some literature as to what we're doing or why we're doing it. It's not going to hurt to have someone out there for a few hours every weekend, Saturday, Sunday mornings, distributing these stickers and making sure people are aware that we want to be aware of their presence on the water. That's all.
Good input. And I would fully agree with you. And I kind of back to, I think, what Mr. Murray said earlier was, seems like we're all in agreement that we need a program. We just need to go to the harbor master and say we want a program and let him figure out how to implement it. We can give him ideas and ask if those guys implement it and come to us with how they want to do it.
And I'm all for making it mandatory if it's not possible. That wouldn't be the right word. If it's, again, enforcement is very difficult. We could just say we're requiring it. You need a dump sticker to use the dump and you can't go in there. into the transfer station if you don't have a sticker. We're not going to police and say, oh, you can't put your kayak in because you don't have a sticker, except for these seasonal employees or assistant harbor masters being there. And for the spring months, at least, I agree. I'm easily saying that if we want to make it mandatory, fine. It just it's an easy no-brainer to strongly encourage people to use it.
All right.
Brian?
So I'm not trying to put the horse before the cart, but at some point somebody will ask what the cost would be for us to man these locations. And so I just did some quick back of the matchbook, proverbial speaking, math. So for us to have 2 kids on weekends for 5 months, 5 hours a day apiece, it would come in under $5,000, which represents less than 1% of the total personnel salaries in the harbor master's office. What I'm really saying here is it's really not a very expensive initiative to do it for safety. So the cost for the deployment of these kids really would be negligible. Just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, good point.
And add to that the signage and all that, another 1,000 or 2,000, not a big deal.
All right, let's, unless you guys want to continue to discuss this, I would say let's focus on item number 2 for next month, right? I'll regroup with you, Dave Friedman.
Yeah.
In between here to kind of put some ideas together on kind of how we can kind of take some steps there, and then what we need to do with the sticker program too, right?
Yeah.
Mike, one other thing, if I could interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
The Business Association in the harbor started 3 years ago a paddle day. We call it an opening of the harbor, where we invite the North and South River and anybody who has a paddle craft, whether it's a stand-up board or a kayak or whatever. We get the Coast Guard involved heavily last year and the year before. We had probably 70 or 80 different paddle boards and kayaks down there, including the Coast Guard, and the harbor master also helped us out. We gave out 150 of those stickers to go on paddlecraft, whether it be kayaks or whatever. So if you folks need to or would like to, let me know. We'll be glad to do something with what you're going to do when we have this event in the spring.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Fran, that's a great opportunity right there to get 70 or 80 paddle crafts that are from the area stickered, right? So
it's increased twofold every year. It just gets more and more popular. So we would have an audience.
Where did they do that, Fran?
We started initially on Museum Beach, and we came all around the outer harbor by the jetties. And then we even had a blessing of the fleet off the deck at the Mill Wharf Plaza. And there's quite a crowd and quite a lot of interest. We got some good press coverage on it too. So, I mean, this would help in a couple of different ways.
Yeah, no, that's good. Good input. Thank you.
All right, great.
All right, good. Moving along here. Next up is under new business, just financial updates from Mr. Brian Kelly. If you have anything, Brian.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
So there were 2 action items that Nancy was going to get back to us on. One on the revenue side, and that was the seesawing every other year revenue stream that we saw coming from mooring rentals. From our mooring revenue. And it would swing $20,000 year over year, consistently going back to 2014. She said she would do an audit internally to try to figure out why that's occurring, because as we all know, we've talked about this a number of times, so I'm not going to rehash it, but we've hit a dead end going down the different roadways, so to speak, to try to make some logic of this. In addition, she was going to expand upon one of the expense items, that being materials and supplies, which we saw a significant jump over the past 2 years. The assumption is that that's probably related to Storm Riley and our spend prior to FEMA reimbursement. On both those items, she got to me last week and told me that due to a shortage of staff in her office, she had to pick up additional responsibilities, compounded by the fact that all the departments are undergoing a budget review right now. So she said it's still on her to-do list, but she couldn't get to it. So I don't have an update on that, but it's still something I'm tracking with Nancy. One piece of information that did come in is SPD did request $31,000 of their $45,000 and change budgeted amount for salaries to run Unit 1, which was transferred. The remainder will be transferred, assuming they provide the salary information, the hourly information to Nancy. However, it's capped at the budgeted amount. So should they exceed that, that's on their dime. So it would be a total of the budget amount for $45,000. And before anybody asks the question, if this is something we once again want to dip our toe in the water, which we did 2 of the past 3 years in meetings with SPD and the TA, et cetera, including writing a letter to the Board of Selectmen and meeting with advisory, that's something that we really need to be time framing for the May period, because budgets are pretty much baked right now. So it would be for the next cycle. So I would recommend that if this is something that we want to address again, whether or not Waterways is partially funding the salary expense for Unit 1, then that's something we should target for an April discussion with May letters going out. That's all I have, Mike.
Okay. Yeah. So that would really be something for fiscal year 23, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Brian?
Yes, David.
Quick question. So this would be the 3rd year in a row that we did some sort of an effort to try to push back on this charge. And instead of putting a whole lot of more BTUs in this thing, is there any way to talk to the town administrator just to see where his head's at on it? Because if he doesn't support the idea, then let's not spend a lot of time on it. But I think this will be the 3rd year in a row we suggest something that doesn't happen.
Yeah, Dave. So we've had meetings with the TA, and I can categorically state that he is 100% opposed to our efforts. He supports this. This was done without Waterways involvement with the prior day, and that's why we tried so hard to change it. And obviously, we know that that's despite the best efforts of Howie and I meeting with SPD and the TA down at the public safety facility and having a very intense conversation about this.
Right.
That's something he fully supports, leaving it the way it is. And frankly, if you take a look at the finances of the town going forward, I'm sure Maura could certainly provide a lot more insight than I can. There's not an expectation that there's a lot of money laying around out there that he could allocate this $45,000 away from some other department and give it to SPD. So
I just think we should not. We've got a lot of things we're trying to do in life. Let's not spend a whole lot of time that we're not going to be successful. So even though we believe it's wrong, and even though many of us believe that the $45,000 this year would be $90,000 next year or the year if it's not checked, I mean, we got to get a lot of things done here. So let's focus on what we can change.
So before you go there, Rick, I don't disagree with that, but just to be clear, by remaining vigilant and watching it, this number has not changed substantially over the past 3 years. It's always been in the like $43,000 to $45,000 range. Sorry, Rick, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, this is good. Good point, both you folks, in my opinion. I agree with you, Dave Sinkowski, that being Sisyphus and rolling the boulder up the hill only gets us so far. But having said that, we are advisory to the selectmen, not to the town administrator. Town administrator works for the selectmen. We advise the selectmen. So I think we would be well advised in this situation to continue to register our displeasure and concern with this. I forget when the last time we wrote the select board about this, but I would be fine if this is what we feel like, us writing a simply pointed direct, respectful letter to the selectmen. And at that point, following Sinkowski's lead, we're done. That's all we can do. But I think it's important to have that paper trail and do our jobs advising the select board about it.
I think we did.
To add to that, Rick, the idea of, I'm not sure if there's an advisory person here or our coordinate, our liaison from advisory, letting them know about it as well.
That's a good point. You could address it to the select board and the advisory committee at the same time. Very good point.
If I'm not mistaken, I think we did that in 2019, Rick, when we actually met at the...
I recall that, and we should probably put it on our calendar for every year about this time, or whatever.
Brian, one last thing to your report. So a good part of our meeting last month was going over the financials, and there were 3 areas, and you mentioned one of them where there were variations in the revenue that we didn't quite understand. I have a suggestion that when we report revenue on moorings and slips, that we consider next year breaking it down from mooring slips and then South River and North River, so that we have an idea of one, where our revenue comes from, and 2, when there's variations, is it in a certain area? I did write to Nancy Holt and asked that, if we wanted to do this forward, would it be possible? And she said it wouldn't be a problem. It would just be from this day forward, not obviously looking backwards. I would suggest that for the board members in 10 years sitting in these chairs, they would probably appreciate us doing this now, so they would have a little better data.
Good point, because we have the data, right? We just don't have it organized in a fashion that we can actually determine what's where, right?
Correct.
Easily, at least, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. So it would be strictly mooring, Dave, you're talking about, right? Slip revenue is associated strictly with the harbor. There's no slip revenue in the rivers. There is waterway usage fees, obviously, in the river, harbors, etc. But the mooring fees that we're really chasing are rivers and harbor. And I'm certainly not being discriminatory towards anything in the river. However, the far majority of the moorings are in the harbor. And one of the ways we're trying to attack this is finally mooring info system seems to be getting to a point where we may be able to use it in a way that would involve the billing research, where we can identify what moorings have paid and haven't paid through that system, versus doing it through an Excel process that would have to marry up multiple databases to find it, which is the current methodology. It'd be nice to move this thing into the 18th century as opposed to the way we're doing it right now. So I agree with what you're saying, and I'm hoping that we're on the way with this mooring info systems. But anything we can do to fix this is obviously something we want to do. Howie?
Ryan, are you suggesting that we don't have a consolidated billing system for mooring info?
Howie, you spend a lot of time with it. What do you think?
I can't believe we've had a contract for at least 3 years of mooring info, and we're still talking about consolidating systems for one comprehensive accounting system.
So what I'm saying, Howie, and I'm not defending mooring info systems. Mooring info systems has several roles in the harbor master's office. Billing is just one of the legs of the table. Reporting and other things are involved in it. As you well know, the way it had been done in the harbor master's office, the billing was checks came in, they were recorded in a book, and then they were sent over to Nancy's office for deposit, etc. And trying to build up the database in mooring information systems, your database is only going to be as good as the input. If the input's not being done, it's not the tool that's the problem. It's between the chair and the keyboard.
No, what I'm suggesting is we've owned the system now for a few years. I guess we should take it to the new level and say, at what point are we going to be able to consolidate all this information into one system so that we have a more efficient, more comprehensive system to know the answers to some of our revenue streams and expenses. That's all.
I don't disagree with you at all. And frankly, there should become a point in the very near future that if this system, if the Harbor Master's Office cannot get the system's database in a usable way, then we're on an annual contract with Mooring Info Systems. There was no upfront, so therefore we have termination capabilities in it, and we should consider those.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's sort of like we've automated the mooring waiting list process, but we have no automation on the slip waiting list process. No automation.
Rick Murray.
Yeah. No comment.
So is it not possible for Nancy Holt to add these lines? I'm sorry, I don't understand the connection completely.
So Dave, I have no idea what you sent to Nancy and what you were requesting. I understood what you just said, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. If you want to send that to me and you and I can have a sidebar conversation.
I just took your Excel sheet and I sent it to her and I said, if we want to add lines for the South River, North River, would it be possible to monitor them separately? She said, yes, of course, moving forward. So anyway, if it's possible, I think it'd be good to understand where our revenue comes from and where it doesn't. And
so I think, Dave, I think we have it broken up into zones, right? We have different areas that they consider the different mooring areas for the wait list. So it probably would make sense if we did it by those areas: inner harbor, outer harbor, river, and I think there was 2 areas in the river that broke it up. But I think there's like 4 different buckets that they break the moorings up into. So we probably should look at it that same way, right? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. I just think just having one line item is not the best way to manage it. So however, I don't want to create work for people, but if there's a way to get a little more, details on it, I think it'd be helpful. And as I said, just for the people who come after us when they do this job, and that the information would be better.
Well, like you said earlier, I think one of the important things, if you see a discrepancy year over year, at least you can kind of pull back the data a little bit and say, okay, why is this area off so much? Why have we seen a decrease in the rivers, for instance? It's easier to find it, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So just because we've opened up a can of worms in this, is this something, Brian, that we need to add on to an upcoming agenda to discuss? Moorings info?
Mooring info. Sure.
Yeah. Because I honestly didn't realize that we were at that point where we were kind of struggling with that,
We're struggling with the database of information that the Harbor Master's Office has today and how it relates to reality. Is that a fair statement, Howie?
I think that's pretty comprehensive.
So if I added to the agenda for next month, what would you just put? Mooring info?
Yep.
Database?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Howie, what do you think about maybe we try to get Joe from Mooring Information Systems on the call?
Yeah, I think we ought to have yes. Yep.
I mean, obviously we would have a pre-call, but so just to clue everybody in, he's the engineer who's responsible for many large accounts. Situate's one of them, and he's the point of the spear for Scituate when we have issues, concerns, etc.
Right. Okay.
So, Mike, if you'd like, we'll ask him about his availability to attend a meeting for us.
March.
Lord, is it going to be March already? Yeah, our March meeting.
Yeah.
So folks, I have to jump because I got to go with some family thing right now, but I'd be pleased to be involved in this if people would find it helpful, because this has been a long saga, and I'd be pleased to help on this one in particular.
Thank you, Rick.
Sounds
I
good
gotta
to
go.
me, Mr. Murray.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah. All right, I'll add it on. You can update me, Brian, during the month.
Yep.
Just if he's going to be joining or whatever, or if he can't join, we have a discussion on kind of where the shortfalls are, and we kind of get that on paper so that we have points that need to be addressed.
Will do.
All right. Oh, we do have one more. Damn. So Stephen asked me to add on his new business piling project for the Scituate Marine Park. Essentially what he's saying is that at this point, they believe they're going to have roughly 5 extra pilings from the Cole Parkway Marina project, Cole Parkway / Scituate Marine Park project. And those 5 pilings, if they are in fact not needed, Stephen wants to be in a position where he can move to have them added over at the Marine Park on the end of some longer fingers that would kind of extend east or west, into the harbor to provide, shore up the long fingers that are there. So he was going to discuss it tonight, but he's not here. So I guess he's going to have to do it in the next meeting, but I'll just give you the long and the short is that he just wanted to bring the group into the loop that he's looking at this, and that in order to do it, he needs to request some permitting from DEP. I want to say that he threw around a number of $3,000 to $5,000, somewhere around there, for permitting to have these additional pilings put in. C. White, the contractor that's doing it, already had it in their contract to drive these 5 pilings. So he doesn't believe there's any additional charges for them to do the work, although that to me would be a question mark. But he does want to just kind of let us know that he would like to move forward at some point with requesting permitting from the DEP to do these roughly 5 pilings. So without him here tonight, we really can't do much on it. We had it on the agenda. I just wanted to bring it up. Okay. Wayne, I know you had some input on that.
On the pilings?
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to use the leftover pilings to help fortify the outside slips, the larger slips we have at the Marine Park, because we've seen some damage last year and this year to the slips being broken right off on the end, the amount of weight and wind. But having said that, until Stephen comes back to us with a plan and an idea and cost, really not much to talk about at this point, I don't think.
Yeah, like I said, we'll leave it on the agenda for next month so that he can kind of fill us in, and if he has all the information for us and we think it's worthwhile, then we can do something with them. So,
yep.
And does he think he can get approval in 2 months to get that permit approved? That seems a little aggressive.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. It's interesting that we can't do a comprehensive plan, but voila, we're going to be able to figure this one out. That's why I like to do this plan.
Yeah.
I want to speak to his plan because I think he said it was a 40-day lead time on getting it done. So waiting another month here to kind of have any sort of vote or do something on it kind of, put them up against it. So.
Well, he had these thoughts back last September, Mike. So I don't feel bad about that.
Yeah. Understood. All right. Does anyone from the audience have any input on anything or anything they want to discuss?
I will.
David.
Yes. So I just want to just a little update on the shellfish beds. I know it's not a cornerstone of waterways, but it does have to do with waterways usage and so on. So Plymouth had there was a meeting, Zoom meeting last couple weeks ago, a few hours about they're going through the same thing that Scituate is. The difference being is Plymouth Harbour, they call it there's 3 harbors there, Plymouth, Duxbury, the 3-bay system, they call it, Plymouth Bay, Duxbury Bay, Kingston Bay. They have aquaculture sites there. So there's a little difference with the USDA being involved with the quality of food that's being shipped. And it has to do with, I'm skimming a lot across the top here, so to end this quickly, but the European market and different thresholds are supposed to meet before shellfish get shipped around the country like that. So there's been threats of lawsuits from the Plymouth group against FDA. I myself, through the group in Scituate, have been working towards finding out what the US FDA has to do with personal harvest and consumption on a recreational level. Not much different than if they came in and told Howie he couldn't grow tomatoes anymore because there's a potential risk that something may have happened in his yard. So those are some of the things. It's a real broad-reaching, I think, intrusion on my own personal opinion of that. So we're working on that. I know that Craig has been tuned into it, and a lot of the local shellfish talent, if I will. So we keep the pressure on that. They did some testing at the sewer plant, and what it falls down to is dilution testing. And ultimately, my conversation with Greg Sawyer and Jeff Kennedy at the DMF was that be prepared. This is where they're headed. Be prepared that shellfishing in the North River will not ever be the same as it was, and that they will probably have something in the South River, but they don't know yet what. So in my response to that, it was, so for potential risk of something that may not happen, we're not allowed to do something, but you're going to force me to go from the North River to the South River by skiff in the winter months to shellfish. And I think the potential risk for failure is far greater on that event than eating of the shellfish. So there's been no recorded reports of sickness over the last 8 years. They told me that they should have been closed 8 years ago for the same reason. And there's nothing there. There's no proof in it. And instead of having an event and closing the flats, they've closed the flats to try to find the event, which is totally backwards in my book. So we keep pushing on that and see if we can get some answers. My last conversation was, I quoted Yoda, which is do or do not, there is no try. So let's get it done. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I did attend one of those meetings, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So when's your next meeting? Shellfish one.
Shellfish one has one coming up. I don't know when. I think it's should be in February, because they were going to start doing them once a month just to keep updates. The mayor was on the last one as the shellfish constable. Just keeping pressure on this on them to do as they say they're doing. They're trying. That's what they told me. They're trying. But that, to me, when you grew up in our household, effort minus results equals failure. So let's get going here.
Yeah, that's good. All right, thanks for that update. That's good. Good to know.
I don't know if Craig has anything he wants to add to it, but that's pretty much where we're at.
I'll add a little something on that. I was kind of part of that meeting, and Constable DeMayo made a good point, and that's that we, as Scituate Marshfield, might want to get together with all the growers in the three embayments, which is Duxbury, Kingston, and Plymouth, and become part of that group as a much better financed and lobbying group. So Mike is on the ball. I think he's in the right direction, and he's been pretty successful in getting grants and things. So we're kind of in good hands with what the direction that's going right now.
I guess my input from that DMF call was that the way to solve the problem in Plymouth is that they're going to have to stop discharging into the harbor. We're currently working on moving the discharge into the ground, so the problem will be eliminated. And I think that's what the only way we're going to open up the river to shellfishing again is to not discharge into the river. And I don't know if that would ever happen. That's a lot of resources to try to redesign that sewer treatment plant in the river. So that's what I got out of that meeting.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, how do you discharge into the ground? I don't want to derail this whole thing, but they're just pumping it down into the ground?
No, they talked about land-based ponds.
Settling ponds.
Yeah, settling ponds. So that would be where it would go. So this goes all back and forth. We spent millions of dollars sewering our town, and now they say we have a point source for contamination. Well, that's what they wanted. Then they said, well, the sewer plant's in the wrong spot. I said, well, 40 years ago, it was the right spot. You keep moving the goal line on us, you keep changing things on it. But again, potential risk. It's all BS. It's all USDA. It's all federal government input, and it's all has to do with the commercial sale and transport, import and export of shellfish. Has nothing to do with recreational harvest. Has nothing to do with what we have going on in the river. Absolutely nothing.
Well, I'm sure you guys will get to the bottom of it, Mr. Mayo, and we hope that it gets resolved sooner than later. So, anyone else got anything? Otherwise, we're ready to kind of adjourn.
Nope.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Back in.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
Take care,
Thank
more.
you.
Thanks.
Have a great week.
You too.
Great month.
You too.